and he saw this beautiful woman in the balcony. So he fell in love with her, just one sight. He was told, if you want to meet this woman, what you need to do is you need to go to the maqam of this wadi and pray for 40 days and 40 nights. Don't sleep and make dua. And anybody that's done that was granted their dua. So he went and he did it. That's love. He wants to be with this woman. At the end of the 40th day, Jibreel comes down. If you go look for purpose, like what's my purpose in life, you'll come up with a Buddhist or a Hindu with an interesting figure that's pretty popular. He says there is no purpose in life. Your purpose is just to live. Don't have any purpose. And then you ask the philosopher and they'll tell you the purpose of life is to maximize pleasure. So you want to do whatever you want to do to maximize your pleasure, just go after that. Both of them are basically telling you, be like an animal. Imam Zayd has a wonderful analogy. He's like, so you're just a cow. Cow gets up in the morning, goes out, grazes, has baby cows, comes back to the barn at the end of the day, and that's it. Gets milked. That's your life. Is that what you're after? Your humanity refuses to recognize that. You ask the atheist, they say it's just an illusion, this search for a purpose. The scientist, the purpose is just to figure out how the world works. Why? There is no why. Just figure it out so that you can subject nature to your desires. If you look at the traditional scholars, like Khwarizmi, for example, in his introduction to the book on algebra, the purpose for devising algebra, with all due apologies to those who hate mathematics, the purpose for it, he was commissioned by the Khalifa at the time to write, to put together something to serve inheritance laws and to serve commercial transactions. He said commercial transactions are becoming complex, and inheritance laws with big families, they're difficult to calculate. We need you, Al-Khawarizmi, because you're a mathematician. Put together a text to help us calculate these things. When Muslims engage in astronomy and seeking to understand the planetary motions and the stars and all of these things, the first reason they started doing all of that stuff was because they wanted to determine acts of worship. Again, it was about Allah. Once you do that, because we always like to lament about our golden age, once you do things for the sake of Allah, a biology professor in our university was looking at the history of science, and he said Muslims are a unique case. Had it not been for the political turmoils that Muslims had and the different factions that wanted to fight over the caliphate or whatever, Muslims could have been on the moon by the 1600s. That's how fast our progress was going. But none of it was about just science, for the sake of science, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and those fellas that come up and tell you this is what you need to search for. It was all about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to investigate the magnificence of Allah's creation. Haydin ibn Arabi, when he talks about Wahdat al-Wujud, which is a controversial statement for a lot of people, but it's really not controversial if you understand it. Wahdat al-Wujud, the unity of existence. What he says is that the only thing self-sustaining existence is Allah, existing from within himself. He's the only necessarily existent being, and everything else is contingent. All of us depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ultimately, your purpose, if you want to realize love of Allah, is to realize the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Haydin Shamsuddin al-Shirazi, known as Hafiz, for those of you who like Persian poetry. In his biography, he was not an attractive man. He was a little short. He was very talented with his poetry. And he saw this beautiful woman in the balcony. So he fell in love with her, just one sight. So he started to compose poetry, just, enamored by this woman. And people in Shiraz started to, they loved his poetry, so they started sharing his poetry, started reciting and all that. He was told, if you want to meet this woman, what you need to do is you need to go to the maqam of this wadi and pray for 40 days and 40 nights. Don't sleep and make dua. And anybody that's done that was granted their dua. So he went and he did it. That's love. He wants to be with this woman. At the end of the 40th day, Jibreel comes down. He says to him, what do you want? So Jibreel alayhi salam manifested in the most beautiful image that Hafiz ever saw, to the degree that he forgot about the girl. And Jibreel said, what do you want? He said, Allah. So all of his poetry, when you read it, it's not about your girlfriend or your boyfriend. Sorry guys. It's about Allah. Same thing with Rumi. It's about Allah. Your ultimate purpose is to know Allah, is to love Allah. And your path towards knowing that, the way that you do it, because مَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ, we have not really measured, we have not given the due measure to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu says, كُلُّ مَا جَالَ فِي بَالِكَ فَاللَّهُ خِلَافُ ذَلِكَ. Anything that ever occurs into your mind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is other than it. So how do you know Allah? It's a legitimate question people ask. You know Allah through His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. As Haydin ibn Arabi termed him, the al-insan al-kamil. He's the complete human being. In the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَلَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ إِسْوَةٌ or أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرَ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. In the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam is an excellent example for you, for whoever is seeking Allah and the final day, the final abode. وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا, and mentions Allah much. So you have to make it your ultimate concern in this world while you're here, in whatever it is that you're engaged in, that you perfect it so that you can serve the people, so that you can become beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And while you do that, you're doing it following the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.